In this lesson, we'll learn about control objects. The concept behind control objects is a simple one. We would basically set up objects that would control other objects. But now, setting up control objects isn't always that simple. But basically, we would use them for, let's say, a control rig so that we can animate in a way that is more convenient for the animator. And essentially, we'd be able to hide things like our skeletal chains, leaving just the control objects visible so that, again, the animator doesn't have a clutter to work with and will not accidentally affect something that should not be interfered with. Now, what we're going to do is work with a control object to manipulate this arm. We'll also set up the wrist to be controlled by that object as well. So this is going to be quite an efficient setup. We'll have the effector be controlled by this object, and the rotation of the wrist will be controlled by the same. Now, there are a few rules we want to keep in mind when building controls. One, we want to make sure that they're going to be easy to select. Another, we want to make sure that it's easy to discern where this control belongs. And third, we want to make sure it's going to be clean so we can go back to the default position our character was in before the control rig was made. And that's mainly so that if there's anything that needs to be fixed on the control rig, we can do so by simply zeroing out those controls to go back to that default position. So let's go ahead and create this control so we can understand more about this concept. What I like to do is work with curves because by default they do not render. Under Get Primitive Curve, let's go ahead and work with a circle. We'll see a property page appear. We don't have to change too much here. I'll just go to the radius and bring this down to, let's say, about a value of 1. I think that will be easy to select when we realign this. The subdivisions, we don't have to worry about this. If you ever wanted to redesign your control object, you can always go to tag points mode with the T key, start to move your points around to whatever design you like. And the subdivisions, that's basically going to affect the amount of control points you have on your curve. And I'm going to go ahead and press the space bar, come out of tag points mode. You could also rename your control object from here, which is a good idea to stay organized. So we can call this arm control. Hit enter. Alright, so from here we can now close out this property page. Now we want to make sure that this object is going to be aligned to the area it's going to control, again, so it's easy to understand where this control belongs, what it's going to affect. So with that, Softimage is a great tool for aligning objects. With our object selected, the control that is, we want to head over to Transform and choose Match Translation. From there we can go ahead and choose the effector, and now notice the object has been snapped to the position of the effector. Great. From there, let's head over to the King panel. You'll see that this control object has values. So this is what I mean by making sure control objects are clean. We want to make sure that these values are zeroed out for animation so we can go back to this default position of the arm easily by simply putting in values of 0. So to do so, with the control selected, we'll head over to Transform and choose Set Neutral Pose. Now the values have been stored elsewhere, leaving us with this offset where we have zeroed position, so that again we can establish a clean control for animation. Alright, great. So now that this has been cleaned, we're ready to go ahead and start connecting our effector and also the rotation of the wrist to this control to make it efficient. I'll head over back to the main control panel, and what we'll want to do is first select the object that we'd like to be controlled, and we're going to work with constraints, so I'll introduce you to that. So I'm going to go ahead and select the effector, and I want to only lock down its movement, not rotation, because notice the rotation of this effector really doesn't affect anything. So with the effector selected, I'll head over to Constrain and choose the Position Constraint. Now what do we need to choose? Well, that's going to be our arm control. So I'll go ahead and choose that. Notice no shifting has occurred because we've already taken care of the alignment between our control object and the effector, which is great. we can close out this property page. Again, we cover this more in depth in our intro to rigging course. I'll go ahead and close that out. Now watch this. If we were to select our arm control, go to our move tool with the V key and start to move this around, now we are controlling the arm. And here's what I mean by keeping the scene clean from our bone chains. If we were to head over to the view menu, the viewport, and hide chains, notice how much cleaner that is. All the animator needs to be concerned with is animating on this control object and nothing else. Wonderful. Alright, let's say we go ahead and finish up by taking care of the wrist. So we could always have that parented to the arm control. So with the wrist selected, we'll go to our parent tool. Again, what do we need to choose to define the parent? Well, that's going to be the middle mouse button. And we'll middle click on the arm control. Now as we right click, watch this. If we go ahead and select our arm control and start to move that, notice we should see a change in the orientation of our hand. No longer is it following the orientation of the bone before it, that forearm bone. Right now, it's being fully controlled by the rotation of our arm control. So if we were to go to our rotate tool with the arm control and start to rotate that, now we can control the wrist. Great. So we've really just skimmed the surface with control objects. Let me go ahead and show you something else. If we were to head back over to the keying panel, let's say if we did add some rotation to the wrist. Notice this, if we needed to go back to our default pose for the arm, if we needed to make any corrections to our rig, it's just a matter of zeroing out our position and rotation channels. So I've just went ahead and dragged from the position X all the way to rotation Z. We can put in a value of 0 and it snaps right back to that default place. Great, so in this lesson we learned what control objects are. We've also learned how to set up control objects, just skimming the surface. If you'd like to learn more about this, feel free to look into our intro to rigging course. And also, once you're finished with that, you can take a look at our intro to character rigging course where we build a skeleton from scratch.